Okay, welcome everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. We are both standing and sitting room only at this point. So wonderful to see all of you. So welcome. I'm Mel Chen, and I'm director for just a few more months of the Center for the Study of Sexual Culture at UC Berkeley and professor in gender and women's studies. I'm so glad that our first event as a new member of the Institute for the Study of Societal Issues would be a conversation between Dean Spade and Mia Birdsong. So thank you so much to both of you. It's also an event in the Lifelines Project, which was started within CSSC and formed with CSSC's grad board, which you can find out about on our website. Okay, so please, maybe it's probably obvious, but please make yourselves as comfortable as you need and do whatever you need to do to stay comfortable in this space. And also, this is just your reminder to turn off your cell phones. Okay, welcome everyone. This is such a beautiful crowd. Thank you so much for being part of this. I'm happy to welcome you to today's event, Sticking Together in Tough Times, which is hosted by CSSC and co-sponsored by the Gender Equity Resource Center and the Center for Research on Social Change. I also want to frame this event by acknowledging, out of all the solidary, coerced, or consented energies that fuel our movements and the scholarship here, that UC Berkeley sits on the territory of Huichin, the ancestral and unceded land of the Chochenyo Ohlone. I take the lead of Ella Callow, who has spoken of UC Berkeley's legacy of eugenics, and thus Berkeley's obligation to be consistently engaged in the ongoing act of reparations. UC Berkeley's history of occupation goes back to its founding in 1868, and of course, well beyond the fact of the institution. So I'm framing this event with a call to hold the university more accountable to the deeper recognition of sovereignty and to serving the needs of American Indian and Indigenous peoples. And for those of you who don't yet know them, Sogorea Te' Land Trust is one local way that you can contribute materially to Ohlone sovereignty. So here's how we'll do it today. We'll have a little less than an hour and a half together in this format, followed by a reception in which you can mingle if elbow room allows. We're going to start off with the conversation between Dean Spade and Mia Birdsong, and then we're going to open it to a moment for thinking together. And then we'll follow that with questions and thoughts from all of you. For those of you who are here in person, please write your question or comment on an index card. There were ones sitting on your seats, but hopefully there's ones available to all the others who are not seated. And one of our student assistants will pass those up to me. Those joining on Zoom can use the Q&A feature to ask questions as well. And I just want to say also, we're very appreciative to the incredible East Wind Books here, which is selling books of both of our authors. And so after the program ends at 6:30, you can certainly bring up your books for signing. And also tabling here is Mask for Mask Bay Area, which is a harm reduction mutual aid organization that raises funds for BIPOC and disabled communities and other communities that need support and many more things. Okay, so my pleasure to introduce our two guests today, and their biographies, very briefly rendered for the purposes of this event, say so much, I think, about their necessity in this moment, and also maybe the dovetailing of their commitments. Dean Spade has worked for 25 years in movements for trans liberation, prison abolition, and anti-militarism. Today, our conversation will be focused on his latest book, Love in a Fucked Up World, How to Build Relationships, Hook Up, and Raise Hell together. So, okay. And I imagine many of us have also experienced Dean's commitments in a direct or personal way through community and activism. Mia Birdsong is a pathfinder and futurist who reconnects us with our forgotten wisdom and practices of our collective liberation. She's the founding executive director of Next River and the author of How We Show Up, Mia champions the inherent worthiness of people in her podcast, More Than Enough. And her recent book, Freedom's Revival, research from the headwaters of liberation, charts the interconnected nature of freedom, freedom in quotes. So welcome, Mia. So good to have you both here. Okay, so I think I'm going to turn things over now to Mia to get this conversation started, and we'll try to keep our eyes on the time, so we'll kind of draw it to a close around 5:50.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much.
Hi.
Please welcome them.
Welcome. I keep like glancing at you all and just taking you in. I'm so glad you're here, and I'm so honored to be in this conversation with Dean. Dean's going to kick us off by reading.
Yeah, and also just, so many thanks to Mel and Deborah and everyone who worked on this event and makes the library possible. And it's so cool how packed the room is. And one of the things that this we'll be talking about, no doubt, is the intense isolation people are feeling. And so I just want to give you all permission to meet somebody you don't know here and to kind of break that feeling like you're not allowed to talk to people. We all need like a lot more friends and people in our political communities. So I just hope that you all might like feel the vibe that you could make new friends here. And also Mel's going to give us that moment where we can talk to each other a little bit before we go into the Q&A. So there'll be more chance to really do that. But I hope you'll meet some people because we probably have a lot of shared interests in the room. So yeah, I've been kind of enjoying sometimes starting these conversations by reading the conclusion of the book because I think it rings with maybe with a moment we're in and gets us on the same page. Like probably a lot of people haven't read this book yet because it's new. So maybe it'll give us a little bit of shared ground. The conclusion is called, We're in This Together. Many of us turn towards self-help tools with the hopes of instantaneous change. Capitalism sells promises of total health, wealth, and blissful happiness. But in reality, being alive is a wild, constantly changing mix of beauty, suffering, agony, contentment, and dissatisfaction. No matter how we fight it, everything around us is impermanent. Everything we want and love will come to an end, just as our lives will. We have to approach both our relationships with each other and our own healing with a humble outlook and reasonable expectations. One question often guides me when I am stuck. What am I so afraid of being seen doing that I'm willing to limit my steps toward what I want in life? If you use the methods outlined in this book, you might experience more emotional awareness. You might begin to notice the moments when you're gripped by autopilot reactions. You might hear cultural scripts like the romance myth or scarcity thinking running through your mind and find ways to resist their pull. You might be able to think, that's not me, that's not mine. You might notice when you're reacting in ways that are out of proportion to the situation. Perhaps you might connect this reaction to a fear of abandonment or engulfment and recover before you say or do something hurtful to someone you love. Or you might find that you say those hurtful things, but you're better able to apologize. You might gossip less. You might find your conflicts bring you closer to others rather than damaging your relationships with them. You might become better able to say yes, no, and maybe to other people. You might find that autopilot reactions still arise in you, but they don't determine your behavior and you recover more quickly. And maybe you won't feel as much shame about them. You might find that people or situations that used to really get under your skin just don't get you that worked up anymore. It's helped me to return to the phrase, healing is a spiral staircase. I think about myself walking a circle like a clock. As I heal, I'll re-encounter again and again the wounds that have shaped my life and the coping mechanisms I developed to get through rough times. Each time I re-encounter them, rather than being ashamed to still be affected or disappointed that I'm not fixed yet, I try to cultivate acceptance. This is the hand I was dealt. And everything in my life, all that is beautiful and all that is rough, all that is shared and all that is lonely, stems from this same hand. My task is to cultivate discernment and clarity about these conditions so that I can act with compassion and intention rather than being blown around by cultural forces that try to shape me and a past that I can't change. I can be grateful for the coping mechanisms I came up with as a kid and also decide to update how I react to the world around me, to develop habits and foster choices that get me more of what I want and better align with my current values and beliefs. I also have to remember that I am not something to be improved. There is no fixing, even as I seek to cultivate new skills and capacities. Life is not going to get easier in the years to come. The crises we are facing are real and worsening. Most of us are in some denial about this because it's overwhelming and it's really hard to comprehend. Reports of global heating, mass extinctions, sea level rise, extreme weather, failing crops, ocean acidification, zoonotic diseases, deforestation, and melting ice sheets have become more dire than scientists predicted even just a few years ago. The industrial consumer society that created this crisis has also caused such irreversible damage to the planet that our lives will certainly be irrevocably altered. Many people are already acutely affected. Even if all governments in the world stopped pandering to the interests of the ultra-wealthy, and even if all industries immediately stopped polluting, neither of which is happening, the damage already inflicted is irreversibly changing the planet. We can and should try to reduce any harm that we can, but we also have to face the reality that our lives are about to get much harder. Contemporary human society is dependent on extractive systems for survival. The way we eat, travel, get healthcare, and communicate all pollute and extract. And the COVID pandemic revealed the fragility of the supply chains that keep this situation afloat. It's all so bad, and it's about to get so much worse. And even as this previously preventable collapse unfolds, we have been misled about how dire things are. We've been led to believe that governments and experts will fix this. The catastrophic impacts are multiplying, yet we are fed feel-good stories about renewables and urged to funnel our profound fears and desires for collective action into individual consumer choices, social media posts, voting, and donating to nonprofits whose efforts at policy reform only tinker with the overarching systems causing the crisis. This is the reality of our situation, and in the times to come, we're going to need each other more than ever. As I work to let this incomprehensible and heartbreaking truth into my life, I'm filled with anger and grief. But hand in hand with that grief is an even deeper appreciation for the beauty of the living planet and the bold resistance and care that people demonstrate every day in the face of these conditions. I'm inspired to further divest from the systems of greed that have created this mess and to shake off all the bad ideas and habits they have implanted in my psyche. I ask myself, how do I want to be in these times? Again and again, the answer I come to is that I want to face up to these tragedies with an open and loving heart. I want to be a part of collective efforts to care for others and stop as much destruction as possible. I want to appreciate every remaining moment of my life, even knowing that much is out of my control. I want to live according to my principles and priorities, not wasting time on nonsense I've been told is important. I want to be deeply connected to the people I love. I want to find ways to care for strangers and create survival strategies that are collective and inclusive, not distrustful or insular. In the times to come, we're going to have to find ways to be with one another under enormous stress and devastating grief. We are already feeling much of that. We will be called on to demonstrate capacities that are devalued and underdeveloped in dominant society: generosity, courage, connection, compassion, and imagination. I want us to be as awake to what is happening as possible, as capable as we can be to respond in ways that align with collective liberation. I want us to be able to relate to others with as much integrity and compassion as possible, responding to immediate conditions rather than being stuck in old cultural scripts or coping mechanisms that undermine effective action. The romance myth is a lie. There is no happily ever after coming. There never was. Instead, there is the possibility of being here for what's here, of treating others and ourselves as well as we can, of experiencing the thrills available in intimacy, collaboration, collective resistance, and belonging. Let's be here for what's here together in this gorgeous, fucked up world.
Thank you. I want all of you to take a breath. I don't know about you, and I've read that multiple times, but if you're just hearing that, I feel like I certainly could feel a lot as you were taking us through all of that. And this book is so much about noticing and feeling. Can you talk about why you wrote this and what is it that you want us to get out of it?
Yeah. Thank you. And also, I just remembered I brought this zine that I'm really into that I made with some friends, and there's free copies of it on the Mask for Mask
Yes.
Oakland Bay Area table and also out front. Please take it. Read it. All the images are also online. Why did I write this book? I've been working on this book for a really long time, like 10 years. And the reason is that I have always believed our movements are only made of our relationships. And over the 25 years that I've been in movement work, I've really seen how our lack of skillfulness about relating and our like programming about how to treat each other from the society is the biggest threat to any possibility of resistance. Like it's not about coming up with the right strategy or analyzing the problem correctly or describing it right. We've done that again and again and again. There are important places where we differ and stuff, but that part's developing. The part where we really mess up is that we can know with other people, we need to do this project. We need to get this food out. We need to take care of these kids. We need to support these people in prison, whatever. And then we still cannot do that together or can't keep it going because we have all this other stuff going on and we don't know how to talk about any of the feelings. We don't know how to give and receive feedback to each other because we live in this prison-centered society. So we're like afraid to tell our friend, hey, I hurt my feelings when you were late, or when you don't do your task, it does this for our group, or whatever. Might be useful, beautiful feedback that actually tells you I'm invested in working with you forever. And we don't know how to receive that feedback. That wasn't me, it didn't mean, oh, why you're just saying that? Because, we're really bad at both sides of that. We're really scared of feedback. We think it'll hurt the relationship when actually it'll deepen. Like the incredible trust of having someone share that with you because they love you, and also having someone hear you when you share it is just beautiful glue for trust building, which we really need to do all the scary stuff we have to do together. And I just seen just so much that so many groups fall apart. And I think that one of the places where we act our worst is sex and romance. Like that's kind of like really where a lot of us fall into like the existing cultural norms and certain kinds of reactions in ourselves, certain deep insecurities from those cultural messages and family shaping and stuff can really just make us, like you can have a friend here like is solid, but then you find out that's how they act to the people they date. Really common. And the number of groups that have fallen apart because of people doing unethical stuff around sex or breakups where everybody had to pick a side. It's pretty wild. Social groups falling apart, creative collaborations, resistance groups. And I wrote it because I've spent my life studying the self-help literature to address my own suffering and try to show up the way I want to show up. I've been like, I need this, and this literature is horrid. It's like got some gems, but it's also like really individualizing. It acts like our problems, like how can you have an analysis of our problems in sex and love and not talk about patriarchy, racism, capitalism, or all of it. It's all just takes it out of the context and makes it like about individuals trying to be better instead of like, I can't solve any of these problems without my friends and my community, all of us shifting ideas and shaping new norms and caring for each other as we like freak out. So I couldn't hand like people I was working with the books I was reading because they were so unkind and inaccurate and harmful, bad ideas that are mean and erase people's lives, so much ableism in this literature, et cetera. So yeah, that inspired. At first I just I want to lift the gems out but put them in a different context. That was part of it. It's changed a lot over the years what's in the book, but just editing and re-editing and having a lot of doubts about how to do it right. But I think what I hope people might get out of it is like I hope there's a feeling of gentleness. Like, of course we all have this stuff going on. It's not because we're bad. Everyone's got this going on. When I'm having this freak out, I'm not alone. This freak out's going on everywhere. Maybe I could open up to a friend about it. Maybe our group could talk explicitly about how we want to deal with it because it comes up in every group, that kind of stuff. And maybe I wrote it really like to be very skimmable. I was like, I want people to like take a screenshot of this chart and send it to their friend. I want it to be like, you don't have to read this whole book. We're also making a podcast about it, so you don't have to read this whole book. Like anything that will help people just like use and grab where it makes sense for them. Hoping that if we had a shared language, then you might be able to be like, Dean, I know you just fell in love, but how about if you don't disappear this time? That's really hard. That's a really common one. You know what I mean? Stay with us, friend. Or, I know that it's been hard finding out that group isn't the place you thought where you'd find all the belonging, but we don't need to tear it down. We don't need to destroy the group, but it is hard, the disappointment, and I wish that hadn't happened. If we could just help each other, if we could, a lot of it's about just knowing when you're having a reaction instead of me being like, Mia's the problem. I'm like, oh, I'm having a strong feeling at it. I'm telling a story about Mia right now or the group. That move is what I think the book is really about.
So, that's a lot. I mean, y'all, we're gonna get to it. It's just there's so many like good questions. Like this is a like how to in a deep, beautiful way, which I was not expecting, honestly. There are all these questions to ask yourself. I have some favorite charts we're gonna talk about. There's worksheets, like all kind of things. It's so good. This I think a lot about the like how we need to, you have a reaction and we need to notice. I have an amazing therapist, and she has been saying for a while, she talks just about like noticing yourself. I find that's really hard.
Yes.
Can you talk about like what are the things or skills or ways in which like you developed an ability to actually notice when you're having a reaction?
Yeah, and I want to just say too, like, we're numbed out, and there's no shame in that. Everyone's doing it, but our society is like, go to work and numb out while you're extracted from, either numb out because you have to boss other people around, or numb out and put your head down and get bossed around. Go to school that way. The way we raise children is just to like shut up and, numb out. And then when you're done being at work or school, go check out on consumerism and with, the screen or the substances or whatever, the shopping. It's like be in a fantasy about how you'll look if you do these 17 things to your body, or if you could own this or that. All of that is about not noticing. So we are not good at this because if you're going to have a system that's like a death cult, like racial capitalism is, and we all have to walk by people having to live outside, and we have to see and experience so much suffering, then you have to have people be pretty numb. And it's scary to think about feeling more. And we do really need it collectively. We need to be able to feel with others. It's like trying to do all that on your own, it will not make you well. And that's what we're mostly doing. We're doom scrolling and we're skipping the feelings. There goes the genocide. There goes an advertisement. There goes a funny meme. There goes the ice sheets are melting. This is not good for us. There's no digestion. Imagine all of human history. If you were getting bad news, someone was like, someone's died in your community, and you were never alone hearing that. Now we're like hearing about all the global because of the media, right? So anyway, we're numbed out.
I want to lift up what you just said.
Yeah.
Like the idea that we're receiving all of this horrible information alone, and that we don't have someone who's telling it to us, and then we can't like process it with them. Like that, just what you just said just now felt really profound to me. I feel like we listen to the news, or even if it's not social media, like I listen to a podcast in the shower in the morning so I can like get caught up. And I'm constantly, I'm like, washing my armpits and hearing about people dying like that. I'm going to stop doing that. But I just think that thing that you just said feels really profound.
Yeah.
Like we're receiving awful information alone.
Yeah, and then you have to be okay.
Yes.
There's no, because
I got to finish washing my armpits and
Right.
condition my hair and like
right, and you're
get on
running
with
late
it.
and you've got to pay a bill, and also if we receive that news together, we're animals. There's a whole
Yes.
like chemical, nonverbal, facial expressions, connection,
Yep.
safety thing happening. And that is not happening in all the ways most of us are receiving bad news. And also there's all this really interesting research about how there's no solitude now because people are taking in ideas at all times because we're listening to podcasts on the bus and while we're driving, whatever. And so we have not that moment where you suddenly remember the conversation from yesterday and you're processing it, or a memory from childhood. There's a loss of processing big feelings. And I think that makes us all a bunch of like reactive babies wandering around being like, what? Because it's hard to have to digest, integrate all the really hard things.
So we're totally going off what I was going to talk about, but you cite that book, Stolen Focus.
Yeah.
I can't remember what
Even
his
though
name
that
is.
guy is like Islamophobic and stuff. I cited a
God.
lot of sketchy ass people because I believe in citation,
But also, I
learned something from that book, but he's a dick.
yes, and then you read it, and then you find out that they're a terrible person.
There's a lot of great
But,
things in the book,
yes, I was going to say people who do terrible shit also do great shit.
Yeah.
It's part of our point. Part of what he talks about is, which I appreciate, is that, I feel like a lot of us are like, we're not just bombarded with our phones and like social media and whatever, but we're also starting to be bombarded with like, things that you individually can do to like not use your phone or social media, like get a brick or whatever. And part of what he talks about in that book is that like this is a systemic issue.
Yes.
It is very, very difficult to function in our society without a smartphone. There are things that for work or whatever. So I also keep thinking about like, how do we, like we're doing all of that, right? So how do we like pull back, but also not be like, I'm going to, as an individual, like not do these things anymore. And then we continually fail at it, right?
Yeah.
So there's something I feel like you're getting at that's in between systemic change, which we know is going to take generations, and I as an individual and my like personal responsibility bootstrapping my way through everything. And like how we do this with each other.
Yeah.
And I think that there's something about that feels hard for folks to grasp onto. And I wonder if you could, like, if you were going to say, like, if somebody wanted to stop using their phone so much, like, and you were going to give them a set of questions or whatever for like how they would do that as a group,
Yeah.
what would you say?
Yeah, it's exactly that. It is about doing things with friends. It's especially things that are kind of compulsive and that are hard to stop. Because it's the thing about it, we're not going to solve things through individual consumerism, but it actually does matter what we do. Like I could be like, recycling is bullshit and composting is never enough, so I'm never going to do it again. And it would be harmful to me to stop composting if that is a thing I can do where I live. Like, what's the vibe of that? You know what I mean? There is something about it. I actually do care if the thing that I am buying is the worst thing on the. You know what I mean? I don't buy things from Amazon or whatever. You're like, it actually does matter in that way. And then with stuff like the cell phone usage,
because it's something that is aligning with your integrity.
Exactly.
It's not. It's like even if it doesn't have.
It's about
the
denumbing.
impact you need to do that thing.
It's about denumbing. I'm not going to numb to what this is, even though of course we all do, because I'm sure you've ridden in a car or plane or whatever. But that that feeling of non-perfectionism, the feeling of being willing to be open to the pain, and then knowing that these things are best done in groups. And so I think, most of us, one thing I talk about a lot is I've run into a lot of people who are under 25 who identify as burnt out, like a lot. And that's really scary because that's usually the group of people who does the most wild, amazing stuff in our movement. So, And I think a lot of the burnout is a couple things: unresolved conflict from lack of conflict skills that can come from actually a internet-centered digital lifestyle. There's lots of research about that, about how people are more afraid of each other and more risk averse and less likely to give feedback and less likely to have deep conversations with their friends. And it's also consuming so much stuff through these screens feels natural and normal, but it's actually quite stressful on the nervous system. So we literally are fried from violent TV and video games, from the doom scrolling, from getting in little fights with people on the internet where everybody's really activated. Like, we have to get some hygiene around this to take back. They want us to spend as much time as humanly possible on all their apps, and it doesn't matter which kind. And as that book does a good job describing, it is a design to make you addicted to it, and they're smart to make your dopamine centers and all that stuff. So how do we, make some decisions about that? Like recently, someone in this room said to me that what you do first thing in the morning is what you're really committed to. And a lot of people, it's grab that phone.
Who grabs their phone first thing in the morning?
It's hard, right? And so just, and it's again, no shame, no blame.
No,
but
totally.
what would I need to do with my friends? I also just want to add to this, I'm hearing a lot more people creating grief groups about environmental crisis, or I'm hearing people creating groups where they talk with their friends about something that's sacred to them once a week, or just trying to create more sociality around the agony that everyone's in, instead of we're going to have a mutual aid group, we got this agenda to get through tonight, and then actually we're all fried and so depressed and terrified of what's happening, and we think we're going to get through this agenda, but then we're going to act all sideways and weird because we haven't had any space to feel. Someone in our community died,
Yeah.
So how do we create enough space where you get to be a full person? And it shouldn't always be the exact same meeting where you're trying to get that newsletter out to people in the prisons. That's not fair to everybody, And that also needs to happen. So more of our lives need to happen with others. And when we think we don't have any time, it's really look at what's happening. I think a lot of that time, and people are, they say we spend 5 to 8 hours a day lost in that phone. So we don't have we have higher rents than anybody's ever had on earth. There are some shitty things happening that do take away our time. We work like about a month more a year than people did in the 1950s here in the United States. That's real. I have some thoughts about like how the answer to that is actually collectivizing our living and being less afraid of other people. We're all terrified to have a roommate and have a fight about the dishes. Being afraid of conflict is stopping a lot of our collectivization of childcare, cooking, all the things that would make our lives cheaper and make us more able to reclaim our time from our enemies. I mean, the ticket is up. Like, I think you know what I think is happening with the ecological crisis. They maybe put it in the conclusion because they thought it was too scary.
You had it in the beginning, right?
Yeah, they made me move
I
it.
read I read it before.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm pretty sure this was in the beginning, and
Yeah.
they made you move it.
Yeah, so then I have to read the conclusion at the beginning of the things. But there's just kind of, there's nothing to save money for. There's no reason to invest in buying property. All those things already were, weird romantic fantasies that are colonial. But there's really, really no point in that now. The world will be unrecognizable in 5 to 10 years. So the only thing worth doing is helping to alleviate suffering, caring for others, and fighting back. And so what is that's about what we direct ourselves towards, and that means changing a lot of things in uncomfortable ways. But that's what our social movements have always done.
Yes.
People have always proposed collective living and radical movements. People have always been like, how can we live more the way we believe in? There's nothing, we have some good models, but no one's ever lived through this apocalypse before. This is a global, everybody, this is a different, there's been a lot of terrible worlds have ended here, but this one is really significant.
So, again, I want everybody to take a breath and just notice what that feels like. Reading that, so I read the galleys of the book and the part of it in the conclusion about where you just go in on how awful everything is.
Yeah.
It is what really gripped me into the book.
Mm-hmm.
I was a little bummed that it wasn't in the beginning, and I think partly because I feel a bit like nobody's saying that.
Yeah.
Nobody's saying like we're really and truly fucked. We can't fix this. Like it's beyond that.
Yeah.
But that, and like part of what you're saying is like that doesn't mean we just like become like nihilists and like give up.
Yeah.
And I think a lot about like, if humanity's time is up, I'm like, we had a good run. And that it's as important, like how we go out, right, is still important.
Yeah.
Right. And that I think is what you were saying about like composting, right?
Yeah.
It is about feeling. It is about like, this is in alignment with like who I want to be.
Yeah.
So we don't have to just like even if we're doomed, it still matters like how we be with each other if we're doomed.
Yeah, it matters. It matters to me. Every single person who's suffering, we can prevent. Every single person we can prevent from being deported. Every single person who we can help have a place to sleep that's safer tonight. Like, there's no kind of like it's all over, because it's actually we're going to be living for a long time with lots of people having increased suffering and more reason than ever to do immediate work to care for one another. And it's not new. Lots of people have had to be brave in horrible conditions and have like fought beautifully. Like there's lots of like inspiration to get from all of our ancestors who've struggled and so many people around the world who are struggling now. There's no dipping out. It's just not a thing. And we need each other more than ever, because the lie we've been told is that billionaires or electeds are going to save us. And they're not. They're all on the wrong side. They're only hastening all of the harm. So it really is on us. And the bad news is they have almost all the money and guns. And the good news is we have all the beings on the planet on our side. And so the only thing that matters is whether or not we can coordinate bold action together. And so that's why I'm like, okay, I have to write a self-help book about this, because literally the only thing we have is whether or not we can keep, stick together when things are hard and when we disagree. It's very basic. There's no big answer. We all know that it'd be amazing if they would, blah, blah, they're not doing it. Anything could be done from on the top down isn't gonna happen. So it's only gonna be bottom up. So the most urgent level is what you're doing on your block, on your campus, with your friends, and that idea that stuff isn't important and that relationships aren't important and that's actually girl stuff anyway, you know what I mean? Is that's gotta go. This is the only thing that's important. You know what I mean? If we're gonna agree to do some risky action to save some people's lives, we need to trust each other. We need to reach that level of trust by doing a lot of other things together first, you know? And that's hard right now. We're not very good at that. Then they've designed us to all be very separated, distrusting, assume others are greedy and bad, compete with each other instead of collaborating, don't share. Their story about the apocalypse is the zombie apocalypse in which I have to hoard things. That's all a conspiracy against our well-being.
So how, when I think about like, even if you are doing like really powerful movement work, that there is some resistance, as you were talking about, like to addressing like our relationships with each other. People are like, you know, bad things are happening. This is really urgent. We can't talk about that right now. How have you worked to like get people to understand that like this actually, like our relationships with each other are actually the thing?
This is also so much of your work. I mean, I think, you know, my prior book, Mutual Aid, was a lot about that. Like the second half of that book is kind of a self-help book for groups about how to be together. And a lot of what I've been focused on, and I spent a lot of my time doing like workshops for groups that are trying to do some really hard mutual aid stuff together, or like trying to, you know, do anti-Zionist work together or abolitionist work together, and you know, just usually group unpaid people trying to do something hard, support people in a unhoused encampment or whatever it is. And what we do a lot is stuff like, you know, look at the chart that's about group culture together and have a conversation about what the culture is like here in this group, instead of being like, you always make us late, you always rush us, you know, instead of having those conversations only when the conflict arises,
Right.
have them before and be like, what's it like here? What do we all think? And like have it be a little lighter and more group held. Like it's just like, it's countercultural to talk about us. Our whole culture is about get the workout, right? We're in capitalism, speed up, get the, and then we act that way when our unpaid groups, get the binner drops out, get the, you know, meals out. It's like, actually, that's not the, it doesn't matter if you hurt yourself, if you're exhausted, if you hate each other at the end, that's not true. So if we're, along the way, we're like, oh, it matters how we make decisions. Is everybody getting heard? Are some people bossing everybody else around? You know, what's happening? Are the women doing all the cleaning again? You know, like whatever it is we need to talk about that makes it good here, and whatever we can, like also changes who we are. We change through being in groups where we practice things we've never gotten to practice in hierarchical schools and jobs and families. And then we're actually making the world, you know? So a lot of that kind of stuff in Mutual Aid and the back of Mutual Aid is about that. Like how to just start those conversations in your group, and so that you are starting to care together about what's in here. And I think more people get that, especially after the encampments, the most recent encampments. A lot more people are like, oh yeah, it really matters what goes on in here. So can we kind of hold on to that and be like, I'm willing to do that work and not get into that. All that matters is that urgency. Did we get enough meals out, you know?
Yes. All right. I know we're close to time. I'm going to ask you one more question.
Okay.
If you were to imagine it's 150 years in the future, and we have all read this book, our grandchildren have read it, it's like, you know, become the thing we pass on. How do you imagine, like, what's your, like, most beautiful, juicy, like, expansive dream about how we could be and who we could be in the future?
I'll be real that I can't go that far out because I, like, have this concern about how the, like, nuclear facilities, when they don't have anybody working at them, will all keep exploding, and you know, it's really fucking bad. But I will say that I care so much about right now, and I hope that if a bunch of us share some of these same ideas with each other about being careful and loving, my real hope is that we all, you know, think about these kinds of ideas, whether we read it or not, or talk about it with our friends. And when I'm the activated person who wants to destroy the group, I have this. Because right now, my experience is that one activated person can destroy any group. And I've been in a lot of fucking groups in the last 25 years. That's not sustainable. That's not okay. If one, right? Because we all do get very activated by working together on these life and death matters that relate to often our own biographies. It really matters, right? And so I hope we all read this book not to be like me as the activated, but to be like, what about me? What's it like when I'm if we all did this, and then we all would be better able to compassionately hold whoever's struggling and wants to tear down the group. And when people are really mad at us and it's ungrounded, we'd be like, I get it. I get why they're pointing it at me. Okay. You know, I want to go back to your numbness question for a second, just because that was so good. I will say that I have gotten so much out of silent meditation. I didn't write about Buddhism in this book, but a lot of it for me has just been about trying to notice when a repeated story is going, right? Instead of its reality, it's a story I'm telling. And when I go into silence, I sometimes go to long silent retreats. Like I started going to 3-day ones, then I went to 5-day ones, then I went to week-long ones and longer, right? And when I spend enough time in silence just with myself and I'm in a group, so it actually, I would never do this alone, right? I need the group to hold me and keep this schedule and do this countercultural thing with me that I could never have the patience to do and not use my screens and all that stuff. I'm like, oh, there goes those same thoughts again. I think they might not be me. You know what I mean? I always have this set of thoughts every time, you know what I mean? And that move, I could not have gotten it another. I think there are other ways to get it.
Yeah.
And I've also done a lot of like the somatics work
Yep,
where you're like,
totally,
oh, I can notice that my heart is racing. This might not be the time to press send on that email. You know what I mean? I notice, whatever, like
Yep.
I notice that I like feel this certain kind of avoidant irritation and I can feel it in my body. It's probably not the right time to force myself to do something that I don't want to do. Or, you know what I mean? Like just noticing ourselves.
Yeah.
But I will say, I think like in a society as oversaturated and stimulating as ours, silence is really helpful. And I just want to say, if you're like, I can't meditate, I tried that and it didn't work, there is no one who can clear their mind. That's not the point of meditation. The point is to stop. Right now I'm running around, you know, getting ready for work in the morning or whatever, and I'm listening to 1,000 things and whatever, and I'm also having this wild track of activation because of the conversation I had last night with a date or the thing I just heard, and I don't know it. When I just take out some of this stuff, I might notice what's happening, right? So it's not about like the thing that like people believe that they're not peaceful enough to do this. The more unpeaceful you are, like me, the more you might benefit from finding out what's playing in there, and then being able to be like, that's not mine. That's some cultural nonsense. That's some historical speaker from my family, whatever. Or that's not my values. I'm feeling envy right now about how wonderful Mia's whatever is. But I want Mia to do well in my values. And I'm feeling this, oh, and now I feel shame for not wanting the best for Mia, you know? And then, oh, what's shame like? And just being with it. And I tried to write the book in that tone.
Yes.
Like,
Oh,
whatever's
you totally
happening
did.
is okay. you
Yes,
know?
I feel like there's so much in here that is just about, that is giving us permission to like be, to have all of the feelings and to be everything. And you're asking us to pay attention to it and then to be accountable for like our behavior with it, right?
Yeah.
I also have gotten a lot out of silent meditation. But I also feel like maybe we start with like not bringing the phone into the bathroom.
Yes.
Like, and again, not listening to the podcast while I'm in the shower. Like, I feel like there are these moments that have been stolen from us by our devices where we used to get bored, right? And we used to just like let our minds wander. So even if you're all like, you know, having the shower is where I will have arguments with people.
Probably also really good ideas too, though.
Yes.
You know? Yeah.
Sometimes they're just really good arguments. But being able to have that space where our mind is wandering, I feel like is also really important. Okay, you're picking up the microphone because we're
Background.
there, yes.
Okay, thank you. We're obviously just. Okay, so we're obviously just getting started, but I think, yeah, let's move on to the next phase of this gathering, which is to give everyone a chance to put some of these things into practice, right? Sort of make connections, share a reaction to your event so far, of course, introduce yourself. So we'll spend the next 5 minutes, talk to your neighbors, and then those of you who are online, just come back in 5 minutes and we'll continue. Okay? Thank you. Let's get started in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That works. Okay. All right. I hope you had a good chance to chat with your neighbors and share some reactions. We have some great questions here, and please don't hesitate to keep them coming.
Can I ask a question of the audience first?
Oh, great. Yeah.
Who met a new person? Oh, yes. I just want you all to see that. That's amazing.
So satisfying.
Love it. Okay, that's all.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so I think I'll just go ahead and get started with maybe a pretty intense question first, which is, what are your thoughts on death, the fear of death, and also like one's cultural relationship to death in all of this?
I love this question
That's a
because we were
great
just talking about
question.
Buddhism during the whole break, and I cannot wait to hear your response. I do believe the idea that is a Buddhist teaching that like contemplating our own deaths is beneficial. That and I also feel that capitalism and nationalism and like tells us that we could be eternal if we just bought the right things. And there's a lie that the United States is eternal or that nations are eternal. That we're supposed to get married forever. Like all of this stuff tries to tie our emotional dynamics to a foreverness. You should try to own land forever. Like all of it is trying to make
permanence.
you, personally invested in the illusion of permanence. And to me, especially now, like the faster we can divest from those ideas, the sooner we can take the risks that are required right now. And so it feels to me like, for me, studying collapse is incredibly liberating. It's like meeting the actual moment I'm living in. And if I'm wrong, and it turns out I focus every remaining moment of my life as closely as possible on what I believe in, and I end up living till 90, sweet, Like, wasting less time on university committees or whatever. Or taking walks with liberal Zionists or whatever. So anyway, that's my example of something I've been breaking up with. But yeah, I think that the call to contemplate death and to deal with the unknown, the profound unknown, and also potentially, as the question brings up, to become curious about the deepest kinds of wisdom in cultural traditions that you care about, and how they inevitably are likely to redirect us towards our really countercultural, beautiful values. Feels meaningful to me. I'm curious.
I have two things. One is that I'm glad that there, I think, is a increase, I would say, in the numbers of people who are looking to accompany others as they die. I think just as we need accompaniment when we are coming into the world, we need accompaniment when we're leaving. And that feels really powerful to me. The other thing I would say is that I think that becoming clear about impermanence and our mortality helps us get really clear with our time, right? I used to, as an overreach push against capitalism, be like, fuck deadlines. I'm just I have time forever, no scarcity. And then I'm 50. I'm a cancer survivor. There's a few things that have made me just be more nuanced with how I think about it. And I'm like, oh, I have an extremely limited amount of time. And I have no idea what that is. Mm-hmm. So how I spend, right, how I choose to be in the world needs to, I want it to be as on purpose as it can be. So, I'm somebody who absolutely picks up my phone first thing in the morning. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that is out of alignment with what my actual priorities are. Mm-hmm. And I'm not beating myself up about it. I feel like I know why it happens and whatever. But I think that when I think about death, and our confrontation with death, there is this thing about being really clear about just how limited our lives here are, mm-hmm. and that can be very directing.
Mm-hmm. We were also talking right before this started about impermanence and how we live in a society that wants to have no grief. One of the things we're supposed to be most numb to is grief, because what if we actually felt the grief of colonialism on this land, all the losses, all the forced migrations, all the, the agony of police violence, all of these things, the norm of sexual violence in all of our lives. So to feel grief is really countercultural, and to try to notice where it's shut down. You know what I mean? And so denying death is about denying grief. I mean, I'm sure people know there's like been a long-term effort by workers to have there be bereavement leave in, our jobs, and there's like almost no bereavement.
You get
leave
3
in our
days.
job. Yeah. And there's a whole thing where like the definition in the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of depression, like changed. It used to be like if you were grieving after a year after a major loss, then you became clinically depressed, and now it's 2 weeks. 2 weeks after your child, your lover, your parent, your whatever dies, you're pathological according to that ridiculous book. If you know what I mean? Like it's so anti-grief. And so for us to be like, you can't feel pleasure and delight and amazement if you cannot feel grief. You numb one end of the spectrum, you numb the other. So for us all to be like, what would it take to feel and allow more grief about the fact that we're going to die, about everybody and all the species that are already dying? Like, that is really radical.
Okay, next question. It's really short, but I'm going to tie it to some other ones. The question is, do you want kids? And actually, I sort of looked at that. I was like, huh. But it
Like, is
sort
that
of,
an
I think it
offer?
ties in, right?
Like, I have
Maybe it's
Would
for
you
all
like
of us.
them?
But it did get me thinking about like what is this we, right? How are we defining? How are you defining we? Is that we intergenerational? Does it work across languages? And so one of the other questions is, can you talk a bit about how we engage folks outside of our like-minded groups?
Do you want to start?
No, you go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to have kids. I think that one of the things this book is about is the romance myth and all the things that we're told not to know what they're really like and just to want. And so, like, I'll be safe and well and my life will be meaningful if I'm in a marital relationship, if I have children, if I own property, if I have a certain body, if I have, you know what I mean? There's like us, and it's our life's work to unpack what that really is for us. So I don't think most people go into the choice to be parents with their eyes very open. I don't think it's a good choice or a bad choice, but I think it's a very clouded choice, kind of like the choice to focus on owning property or to marry legally or whatever. So I do wish more people thought about that, and there's a shitload of people out here who need a lot of care and aren't getting it. And so there's lots of different ways to devote our lives to caring for others, especially strangers and people we don't think we like. Like the truth is all the things I'm promoting that we all do with our lives, mutual aid and direct action, are mostly pretty unglamorous tasks. Changing diapers, helping people get to appointments, visiting people who can't leave their houses, cooking stuff, delivering stuff, helping people who are in a crisis who may or may not be pleasant. So we have to reorient what we think it's not the glamorous moment where you shake Angela Davis's hand and get a picture. You know what I mean? Which is what some people think that, you know what I mean? It's like a lot of visiting prisons and stuff. So how do we become people who are in love with the mundane, ordinary work that actually is resistance? Which we've all been, in your college classes, it's often like resistance is when this bill was signed or this judge said this thing or this one time this person made a speech. And really it was like a zillion people making those sandwiches and, carrying that stuff around and changing those diapers. So how do we orient towards care? How do we, in 12-step programs, we say like, we may not like you, but we already love you in a very special way. Like, how do we be in love with everybody's life and figure out how to be with people we don't love, that like we don't, who are not our vibe or kind of annoying right now or really hard. Like, how do we part of this, we were talking about this too. I've been thinking a lot about how becoming more secure, feeling more safety emotionally lets me tolerate more difference. So like some new people are coming into the group and they don't know anything about pronouns and they're gonna mispronoun the fuck out of me. And when I was younger and didn't have a lot of, I might have had to be like, go after them and be like, they've got to go where I'm gonna go or whatever. And now I'm like, well, these other 6 people I'm sitting here with totally get it. I've got a life full of people who get it. I actually have patience for this now. Everyone doesn't have to be there.
And everybody's on their journey.
Yes,
Like,
can I let this person
comes
learn?
out the womb woke. Like,
No.
we all are on our journey, and if we're going to only allow in our lives the people who all have their shit completely together, one, we're gonna be kind of lonely,
Yeah.
and also our movements are gonna be very small.
And that's how they are right now.
Yes.
They're like infinitesimally smaller than we need to have a zillion more mutual aid projects of every kind in every neighborhood. We need to be able to organize hundreds of people to show up at every eviction and stop it with our bodies, because that's the only way we can stop them. And every weapons company and every, you know what I mean? So it's pretty intense to be like too picky. And of course, we gotta have standards. It's okay to be like, some things are not for me. This isn't about having no boundaries, but it's about being, how could I get genuinely safe enough? What kinds of relationships would I need to create with others that I could tolerate more difference and feel okay? Not forcing myself through and hurting myself and being a doormat for people being transphobic or racist or whatever. No, you know what I mean? But that, just even noticing, where do I have a little more comfort than I did before, and can I use it? And can I become less rigid on any of the fronts? Can I be more welcoming to newbies on any of the fronts? What are the right ones for me? And maybe I hand this one off to you, because I'm sorry, I can't do that one. That's raw for me right now.
And like the figuring out of that thing, right? You don't have to do that by yourself. You can you can be like, I'm trying to figure out, is it cool? Can I be here with this person who doesn't understand pronouns? Or can I, whatever it is. Like, we can have conversations. That's part of what we need. Like, we don't have to figure these things out by ourselves. And I think often we're trying to, instead of asking someone who knows us and loves us to help us think it through. I will speak to children because I have children. My children are 14 and 19. I feel like this question is partly about, like, should we be bringing new life into a dying world? That is a personal question, right? I feel like each of us needs to decide that. What I will say about having children is that I wish that the decision to have children didn't feel like such a binary.
Yeah.
That if I'm going to have kids, that means that, like, I am parenting, and I and maybe another person are the only people who are really doing that, versus I'm not having children and therefore, like, don't have any kids in my life.
Yeah.
I feel like what I want is really how we're meant to, as pack animals, raise our young, right? And that is in the collective. I wish it was easier to have the collective, right? So that, like, I don't need to have a kid that is my biological child. Like, I'm actually parenting, caring, whatever, for a child that someone else has given birth to. But, like, this kid is part of my clan. They're part of my, collective. That is what I feel like I see people doing a little more of that. In California, you can have a third parent on the birth certificate, for example. One of my favorite stories about my book is someone coming up to me after an art class that we took together and telling me that she was reading my book when her best friend was, like, giving birth in the hospital. And they and her best friend's partner ended up deciding that all three of them were going to raise this kid together. And I just wish there was more of that. And that requires that everybody read this because for me, I know that I find parenting with one person challenging because I want to make all the decisions. And when my husband and I disagree, usually he just agrees with me, but that's part of why we are together. Doing that, right, invites in an opportunity to, like, figure some shit out, right, as you're, like, raising this kid. But mostly I just wish that it wasn't such a binary for folks.
Yeah, I live in a collective house where we've raised two kids who I am the uncle of and not the parent. That was actually also really useful. But I think that's the same thing. Collective living. It meant that their moms could go out and party at night, and they, you know what I mean, or they go on a trip and the kids would not have their situation. Like, it just made everyone's lives. It's just parenting the way we do it now is terrible.
It's ridiculous.
What we were talking made me want to go back one step to just this thing, which I just feel very urgent to share these days, about difference and insecurity. I think we have all been trained in this intense disempowerment, where we're like, I'll be saved by the cops, the teacher, the parents. I'm gonna take the conflict and get it out there. I need someone else to come and tell Mia that Mia's wrong and I'm right, or witness that I'm the victim. That's the story of, it's what, like, liberalism is placed in us. And we play it out on the internet a lot. So, Mia says something I don't like, and instead of talking about it, I post about how Mia is bad. And I can't tell the difference between my friend Mia from the group I'm in, or somebody Mia who I think is okay, but is in the group I'm in or in the community I'm in and doing some similar things, and like the university president who's like actually my target, who it makes sense to feel vengeful and want to embarrass, and you know what I mean, like
Yes.
that, right? Because I just want this like court of public opinion, which is never satisfying and never gives you what you want, right? So there's just the internet has really made it hard for us to tell the difference between somebody we could try to organize and shift and move their opinion, like, hey, let's do this differently, or at least give that a shot. And people who are truly, really the opposition, and that can be confusing, but I should talk to friends, because probably what's happening is I'm having a strong emotional reaction to something. I felt left out, or I felt not seen, or whatever. I'm telling a political story about that, which probably has some truth in it, and now I'm really causing a rift. I'm campaigning against somebody from my own community in the community. I can never work with Mia again. Now Mia is also like getting really hurt by this takedown, and is like, I can never be in a group with Dean again. And that,
And I
what
might
mean?
need to leave the movement that I'm in and go become a banker or something.
And nobody got satisfaction. Nobody got heard.
No, everybody was destroyed.
Yeah, and it's very court-like, it's very cop-like. There's, so I just think that question, can we learn how? I mean, a lot of that's about giving smaller feedback along the way, not blowing up with it, talking to a friend before you press that button that's going to send that email or post that thing. But this is a very dysfunctional thing.
Not
that's happening.
having public conflicts.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't need to do that.
Yeah, you can get support from people. There's so many other options. I do think that emotional dynamic internally of wanting to be witnessed in that way is something for us to all work with. It's very unsatisfying in the end.
Okay, next. This is maybe more of a practical and yet very deep one. This is from a student at UC Berkeley. How can we as students bring more awareness to mutual aid in academic settings and give it the validity it often lacks in these settings where community relationships are not as highly valued?
Yeah. Yes, for the most part, the university is not a place for learning, right? It's a place for social control, and then you get these few really rad professors who you can have a really different experience with maybe, but we should assume that we have to study on our own with our friends and in our political groups. The best learning is in the more horizontal spaces that can happen when you're like having a radical study group. All of my favorite learning I ever did was, that kind of learning. And so I think that's important, is like, and I've seen a lot of people, university campuses are great places to do mutual aid projects. Survivor support groups for people. There's so much sexual violence that we all bring to the picture of the university community. People doing food banks together, people helping each other with immigration issues. People, like all the things that are happening outside the university. There's lots of unhoused people connected to this university. Like all the things that are happening outside are happening inside the university, and the university is in a place where all the things are happening. So every form of mutual aid we can imagine, immediate response around immigration stuff, figuring out how to support people to get reproductive and trans health care that's being made more difficult, like anything, we can do it here. Do you have things on that?
I think I want to point out that part of what I feel like I hear you saying is to not look to change the institution, but actually that you all can just do the thing yourself.
Yeah. And also, like, that's the thing, like, shifting our ideas about protest culture from an upward, like, let's convince our oppressors. It's not a misunderstanding what's going on. They know that genocide kills people. You know what I mean? They know that, like, they've heard all about what police in jail do to us. They know. All of our activity is actually aimed at each other. Wow, we can do this. We can fight cops. Wow, we can do this. We can protect people. Wow, our movements are carrying spaces where you'll be welcome and are allowed to learn and make mistakes in public. Like, our messages are for each other. We can be bolder. We can be riskier. We can be more loving. We can be forgiven. All of that it's really like, when we go to a protest, it's not at them. You should always, when you go to a protest, I think, have with you like the flyer you're giving out to influence us, right? Or the sticker, or the or you're there as a street medic to help people make sure they're masking, or whatever you're there. Mask for Mass Bay Area is such a good example of this kind of like, bring it to each other, right? Does everyone here know how to use Narcan? We can. You know what I mean? So it's a shift towards stopping looking up and starting looking around and down. Who's actually struggling more than me? How can I support that person?
I think that's such a great answer, because it also makes the university less important, right? The work can happen anywhere, in any space. Okay. How How about this one? How do you take yourself less seriously in doing inner work that can feel so high stakes? And especially when we may so long for these other ways of relating.
Oh, y'all, I am someone who has historically taken myself way too seriously. I get defensive, I get mad. I am partnered with somebody who makes fun of me a lot, which is totally in a very loving, like he's not being an asshole, like in a very loving way. That has helped a lot. So I think having people around you who love you deeply and will just like remind you, right, not to take yourself too seriously. And then like one of my mantras is to hold it lightly, like whatever it is. I think for me, there's some imagining that I've had to do around, like, what happens if I don't take this thing seriously, right? Like, what happens if it, like, it's about my controllingness, it's about my historical rigidity and controllingness, and being able to imagine what will, like, my like worst case scenario and seeing that it's not actually that bad, has helped a lot.
That is one of the first things I ever learned in therapy. What's the worst that could happen?
Yes.
Let me hold it lightly. I mean, a lot of this book is about holding sex and love more lightly. That's something people get really security oriented around. And that's one of my goals for myself, is just to hold those things more lightly. This is not a bigger determinant of my well-being or safety, even though it might emotionally feel that way. I mean, it is a more dangerous realm of relating in our culture, more likely to be killed there than anything else, but it's not, holding it more lightly is really helpful. This question also brought up shame for me, which a lot of my work in my lifetime is about shame. Am I ashamed that I'm broken, that I'm not fixed yet? Is there a story here that I shouldn't be having a hard time? Everyone is having a hard time. My friend Rania always says, don't judge your insides by other people's outsides. They may look chill. It may seem easy for them to do whatever thing you wish you were doing easily. You'd have no idea what's going on in there, So being more, and there's really good work about how shame is often dispelled by us talking about it. Like, I think I'm the only one having it, and it's not. So I can say, do you ever have this kind of thinking about your body or aging or about, when you talk in public, does this ever happen afterwards? And it just eases it. Be like, oh, it happens to other people too. Checking shame out with another person is advice I've been given. If after this, I'm like, Mia, was it so fucked up when I said that? That will help to have another person be like, Dean, this is reality. You know what I mean? Even if Mia gives me real feedback, it's not just a person to say, yes, you're fine, but just to actually be like, probably my shame is spinning somewhere funny. And the other thing I'll say, I learned this idea actually from generative somatics here in the Bay Area, this idea of the shame trampoline. On top of the trampoline, I'm up here going, I'm too much, I'm disgusting, I'm terrible. Whatever my shame messages are, I shouldn't have said that. Everyone hates me. Whatever, you know what yours are. Underneath the trampoline is a really intense feeling that your system is protecting you from, that you're scared of, like devastation or feeling really alone. And for me, if I can ever get under the trampoline, it actually feels way better. I'd rather feel the real thing. I no longer want this coping mechanism. I know why I came up with it. It made sense when I was a child, but it's actually now, that's actually in my way. Being able to really feel terror, devastation actually connects me more to other people and to the reality that we're in. So just even, is there anything I can do to find out about what's underneath? What's really scary about feeling more? And that's just usually like slowing down, noticing, talking to other people, so that I can, because it's actually not that, I can survive feeling that. I actually can survive it. It just seemed when I was a kid like I couldn't,
Okay, so I'm aware that we have 5 minutes left. So how do you feel about me reading you a few questions, and you can sort of decide how you want to take them on. One is, I want to organize my apartment complex. My landlord is a good one. He gave us a $100 gift card for Christmas. What kind of advice would you give for organizing when the enemy appears benevolent? Okay, so that's one. Number two, how do you define patriarchy and what is its impact on the current crisis? The third one is, what are your thoughts about the role or need for forgiveness in this moment?
Few small things.
Super small. You go ahead.
I want to just recommend this newish book called Abolish Rent. It has been a really enlivening resource for me about all kinds of housing organizing. There's a really awesome chapter in the middle that's really short. The whole book is really short. That's just like understanding the whole history of racial capitalism through housing. It's just so good. There's all these juicy stories about Frontlines organizing in LA that's like really creative and militant. I think that thing about the person's, answer their own question about, yeah, it's so hard when people who are doing extractive things like wrap it up in a pretty package, and it's so common, people call it lipstick on a pig when it comes with cops doing it, but also like, I've heard it talked about as the problem of like the pinball machine to deal with your labor concerns. We're going to put a pinball machine in the break room. You know what I mean? Like that kind of cover over stuff. So I think we're all getting better and better at spotting all that, especially when it's like neoliberal multiculturalism. We're going to have a pride thing, but also get back to work, whatever. So we want to look out for that. I also want to recommend the book In Defense of Looting. This is my very favorite book right now, especially chapter 5, to try to imagine how there could be enough of us coordinated to really, really disrupt and get what we need. It's just great stories. It's written by a journalist. It's easy to read. There's an audiobook out there, but especially chapter 5. It really helped me with this kind of stuff. I do write about forgiveness in this book. I think most of us have never had authentic experiences of forgiveness because we haven't had the people who did the worst things to us, like in our families or schools, they don't apologize. There's no, that process is impossible in these hierarchical relationships. And I think it can really transform us if we can. And I think you can do a forgiveness process without the person apologizing. And I describe how to do that in the book. But I do think like learning that muscle is very countercultural and very helpful. And then doing it on the regular. So I'm really glad this question came up, even though I don't have time to go into the depth. Yeah, and I mean, I think our times are defined by, colonialism, patriarchy, white supremacy, and how they all braid together. And did you guys see that AI video about Trump and Gaza? Mm-hmm. It's one of the most harrowing things I've ever seen in my life. And the way, there's that one part where Trump is with the beautiful woman in the casino. Every element, every tick is checked. You know what I mean? Every box. People keep asking me, why are trans people at the, in the target zone? Who gives a fuck about this set of people? Why is this so important to today's politics? And there's nothing new about colonial racial projects needing gender and sexuality norms as a fundamental way to organize oppression and get ordinary people on board for things that will not benefit them. So it's a really powerful time for solidarity around every aspect of fighting patriarchy and gender norm enforcement. It's there's a real moment where people are going to ditch us. That's happening. And so it's how do we make every space we're in that way? And that includes letting people have room to learn. So not rigid norms, but instead this space is going to have feminism and pro-queer, pro-trans, everything in a way that invites lots of learning and unlearning, instead of this is going to be if you're not a card carrying blah, 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 you can't come in. That's not going to work.
Yeah. I have nothing to add.
Nothing
that
to
was
add.
Perfect. Yes.
Thank you, Mel. Oh, our poem.
Oh, yeah.
One more thing. We're going to end this by reading a poem together, because everything's been really heavy, and this poem, I think, helps us kind of recognize this is a ritual and it's sacred, this space that we even chose to come here in this antisocial society and try to figure shit out together.
Dean means we, by all are going to participate.
Yeah, so this is called Life Chant by Diane DePrima. It's from the 70s. This is an excerpt. I didn't include all of it. And at the end of every line, pretty much throughout the poem, we're all going to together say, may it continue. It's part of the poem. So it's a call and response.
Should we stand up?
Yeah. Cacophony of small birds at dawn.
May it continue.
Sticky monkey flowers on bare brown hills.
May it continue.
Bitter taste of early miners' lettuce.
May it continue.
Music on city streets in summer nights.
May it continue.
Kids laughing on roofs, on stoops, on the beach, in the snow.
May it continue.
Triumphal shout of the newborn.
May it continue.
Deep silence of great rainforests.
May it continue.
Rolling fuck of great whales in turquoise ocean.
May it continue.
Clumsy splash of pelican in smooth bays.
May it continue.
Rite of birth and naming.
May it continue.
Rite of instruction.
May it continue. Rite of passage.
May it continue.
Love in the morning, love in the noon sun, love in the evening among crickets.
May it continue.
Long tales by fire, by window, in fog, in dusk on the mesa.
May it continue.
The night music.
May it continue.
Grunt of mating hippo, giraffe, foreplay for snow leopard, screeching of cats on the backyard fence.
May it continue. Without police.
May it continue.
Without prisons.
May it continue.
Without madhouses, marriage, high schools that are prisons.
May it continue.
Without empire.
May it continue.
In sisterhood.
May it continue.
Through the wars to come.
May it continue.
In brotherhood.
May it continue.
Though the earth seem lost.
May it continue.
Through exile and silence.
May it continue.
With cunning and love.
May it continue.
As woman continues.
May it continue.
As breath continues.
May it continue.
As stars continue. May it continue.
May the wind deal kindly with us. May the fire remember our names. May springs flow, rain fall again. May the land grow green. May it swallow our mistakes. We begin the work.
May it continue.
The great transmutation.
May it continue.
A new heaven and a new earth. May it continue. May it continue.
Read this every morning when you wake up.